I feel like a happy married couple with a beautiful child named Kelly Walker that didn't get flowers.
It's just for the adults, Kelly.
It's just for the adults. Yes, thank you to Wendy for sending us flowers on our podcast anniversary. We received those at our places of business,
yes,
respectively. That's were a little nicer than mine.
Don't let Wendy hear you say that.
Just kidding. It's just for the comedy.
Yeah, we had our
gorgeous.
podcast anniversary.
Podiversary.
And at least one listener was paying attention and got us flowers, and it was super sweet.
It made us feel so loved and valued.
And seen.
And
so seen
and understood. Thank you for understanding. We have the most thoughtful listeners, and we cannot say thank you enough.
We talked about that even when we weren't recording. We talked about how much we love our listeners and what a thoughtful bunch they are, and what a great community is being established around the podcast.
Yeah,
so
cool,
thank you to all of you.
Sweet bunch
and
of people.
Especially Wendy.
Yeah. Especially Wendy. Wendy's winning right now, everybody. All right, that's the business.
Okay.
Now that we've pitted our listeners against Wendy.
That's not what we're here to talk about this week. Do you want to rip the envelope?
I don't want to rip the envelope because I've been putting the hard work in the past few episodes. Ripping these envelopes till my little hands are sore.
Yeah. You've got blisters on your hands, I think.
And paper cuts. Riddled with paper cuts. Yes.
And probably some carpal tunnel to go along with all that.
Arthritis in my knuckle, I'm sure.
Well, I'll rip it, Marilla.
Okay.
So here we go. And the topic this week is family business.
It's the family business, you know.
The worst. Nostra.
Oh,
is that the thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Marilla's in the mob, everyone.
You heard it here first. Beth said it, not me.
She's Italian.
I am.
Mm-hmm. And I'm Irish. So yeah. So there you go. We got mobs on either side.
Yes. We're a powerful podcast.
But that's not actually
that's
truly
not the family business that we're here to talk about.
No. We don't talk about it publicly.
Exactly.
We just have our fronts, which is Marilla's Mindful Supplies and Stomping Grounds.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. And it's come up on the podcast before that you and I were raised by small business peeps.
Yes.
Do you want to tell a little bit of your history?
I would love to. I'm so glad you asked. I was raised by...
This sounds like the beginning of a country song, doesn't it?
I feel like banjos and like beautiful, I don't know, a two-step should be starting. So my dad, when I was very young, he was a musician, and then they started to have a family, and he decided, I should make money more consistently. And he started window cleaning, and he started a window cleaning business. And then that evolved into window cleaning and janitorial. I hope nobody at home is getting too excited by this titillating business.
Fascinating, Marilla. Tell us all about it. And how many floors did you clean?
Oh, I couldn't even count. But yeah, he started out window cleaning, like high-rise window cleaning in Albany.
I mean, that is exciting. I wouldn't want to do it.
Exciting.
No.
Yeah. So he was doing high-rises and hanging off the side of skyscrapers and things like that. And then we moved to the Finger Lakes, and he started doing residentials, and we started cleaning banks. Not in like the mob way. Where you rob them. But, but in the real vacuuming and wiping down countertops way. And from a very young age, we clamored to accompany our father on these janitorial excursions.
Well, it's got to be very exciting to be the people who go into the bank when no one else is there. I've always wondered about those people. And you've got the key.
You have the key. You have all the keys.
And you just walk right into the bank.
You can just walk in, and you can, not that I did this, but you can just lay down on the floor. You just lay down on the floor and sing a song if you want to. Nobody's there.
Right.
But you know what? What's really awkward is when you're laying down on the floor singing a song, not that I did this, and someone was working late and they walk in.
Oh, no.
Find
Thank God that never happened to you.
Laying on the floor in the middle of their office, just singing a song. So yeah, we all grew up. Before we were old enough to actually be working, we all wanted to go with Dad and help him because, yeah, you could go in and no one was there and sneak around basically. And we would wipe things down and vacuum things.
It sounds like he wasn't working you too hard if you're laying on the floor singing a song.
It felt really cool at like 10, 11 to be doing this and go and help Dad. Then when you're like 17, 18, you're like, why did I start myself so young? I've been doing this for too long. And so, yeah, we grew up.
Burnout. I'm 17 and I'm burnt out.
I'm burnt out. If I scrub one more toilet, I'm going to have to change my identity and move. So, yeah, we grew up in the family business before we started working in the janitorial. You know, Dad went to work every day. It mattered how many accounts he had because it was paying our bills. And that is still to this day. We don't do window cleaning anymore, but we still clean banks.
I think it's interesting that you're saying that because you actually have a different job now.
Right. I totally do have a different job. I'm no longer affiliated.
But you relate to it still, right? And it is in your skin as a we.
It's like part of my identity, really.
Yes.
And I don't feel like I'm very emotionally attached to it, but it's just part of who I am. Yeah, crazy.
And how do you feel about it being part of who you are? You feel good about it, I think, right? You're still like voluntarily identifying with this portion of your history. Right?
I am. I mean, now that I'm no longer cleaning 3 nights a week in the middle of the night, I feel way better about
saying we.
saying we. But yeah, I mean, when there were seasons where we were doing that. We were cleaning almost every night. And that was a little tougher. But now that I've got some distance, I'm very proud of what we have.
Of course you're proud. Yeah, and you should be proud.
Yes.
Right? I think it's interesting how people might not think that that's a glamorous. Some people might not think that that's a glamorous family business, and other people might,
myself included.
Yeah, but it's important to work. That's invisible work, right?
Yes. I mean, during the pandemic, and I don't want to spend this whole time talking about janitorial, but during the pandemic, it became very, 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 very. All of a sudden, it became really important, invisible work because everyone was very frightened. And they really wanted to make sure their spaces were clean. So, you know, you don't really think about how important it is until you're in a moment like that where you're like, oh, gee, if I don't clean this really well, people could be really seriously hurt.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's important. And I think I've been very thankful for it because although my parents always instilled the value of humble work. Honest work. I never felt like it was lowly or anything, but I'm thankful for that time because it's work that you have to do without anybody looking.
Yes.
So I think it helped my work ethic after I got done singing while I was laying on the floor.
You come in the night, you're gone by the morning. No one one
says thank you.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah. But what about you? I know that you had family businesses coming out your ears. Tell me about this.
My parents were divorced. So I had the household in which I lived. My stepfather ran a business.
Okay.
And my grandfather on my mother's side also ran a business. It was a family business. So my grandfather's business was a rug cleaning and installation business that my uncle took over.
Very noble stuff. Yes.
And my stepfather's business was a milk distribution, a dairy distribution business. So it was like the last standing milkman door-to-door service.
What?
Yes.
In this area?
In Wayne County.
Oh,
it was
my
like
God.
The
Bring it
business
back.
was based in Williamson, New York. Everybody can Google
Classic.
that.
Shout
I
out
guess.
to Williamson.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got thousands of listeners in Williamson.
Yes. A lot of farmers in Williamson. A lot of that's a bedroom community to Rochester. So I remember growing up, which was in the 80s and early 90s, before Marilla was born.
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah. There was a lot of people who worked at Kodak and Xerox, which were Rochester-based companies. And I remember going to school with folks whose parents worked at Kodak and Xerox.
And that was big.
Those were big
deal.
companies. And their worldview seemed so vastly different than mine. That they seemed to belong to a whole nother sort of tribe of people.
Yeah,
in some
I
ways.
can identify with that.
So they're my friends. I'm not saying we were oh, they didn't talk to me and I didn't talk to them. No, that's not how it was at all. But it just seemed like culturally it was very different than growing up in a small business family.
I was you took the words out of my mouth because I was like, I don't think that cultural difference is because of your parents and their parents working in different industries. I think it has something to do innately with being a part of a small family business, because I could say the same thing growing up many years later, decades later. I could say the same thing. I would be hanging out with friends and just the vocabulary was different. And there was this feeling of okay, yeah, I got to go to work. And yeah, it sucks, but you got to do it because it's part of the family business. You don't want to leave your friends hanging out, but yeah, well, I got to do it. But it wasn't a reality for my friends whose parents had a 9-to-5 working for somebody else.
Right.
It just wasn't, there's a layer of responsibility, I think, that is bestowed. And maybe, I don't know if that's healthy or not, but.
Well, what I was, I think it's, for some folks, they truly do clock out, right? At 5 o'clock, they clock out. And then they also have an assigned amount of vacation where they're not responsible for anything. Right. In, business wise. But I just was very aware growing up that on a vacation, we were a phone call away from a problem that would, lasso the whole family back into work life. And yes. I'm not, I don't want to sound whiny about it. It was just the way
really
it was.
Traumatic.
It was
just... Listen, there's going to be therapists listening and being no, it was traumatic.
You're not fine.
You're not fine. You have a complex. But I agree. It wasn't a negative thing. It was just an awareness that that's part of life and that's the way it works. And if we have to go take care of something, we got to go take care of something.
Right.
If something happened in one of the buildings that we cleaned in the middle of the night, chances were we had to go, well, not me, but my parents had to go take care of that. That's just the way it was.
Yeah, we would always vacation very close to home.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that, you could maybe try to be mentally away.
Yeah.
But it's 45 minutes and you're, we didn't go far.
Right. And if if you have any kind of business that involves animals.
Oh, sure.
That's even more. I mean, some people that I know that have horse barns or cows or you name it.
Yeah. So my stepfather's family had a small, by comparison today, a small dairy farm.
Yeah.
And they would produce milk. And so there's the farming side of it. And then there was the distribution side of it. And my stepfather was the distribution side of it. So we would get accounts like your parents would get accounts. And one or two big accounts could really change things for you financially.
Right.
So you were bidding for accounts, but also there was this door-to-door milk delivery service, which was archaic even then. It was archaic when I was a kid.
That. Bring it back.
But at the same time, as a 11-year-old, we're getting up at 2 or 3 in the morning to go load the trucks and then drive around all of Wayne County, New York, and deliver milk in people's little milk doors in their houses or their milk boxes on their porches.
Did you think it was the coolest thing when you were 11?
No, I thought I didn't want to get up. I wanted to be in bed.
That is way too early.
Yeah.
I got to say.
Yeah. And it was neat seeing the sunrises every morning, and it was neat hearing the crickets, and it was neat being awake when everybody else was asleep. But I also really wanted to be asleep. So.
Yeah, we had, with ours, with janitorial, you're cleaning after hours or before hours. Mm-hmm. And there were those few moments I always wanted to go after hours because double-edged sword. You get to go into the place that nobody's in, but also you get to stay up later than you would normally get to stay up. It's a win-win. Yeah. But every now and again, nobody would want to go and clean. Like, nobody wanted to stop what they were doing and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm not talking when we were really little. I'm talking like 16, 17. We're starting to learn.
You didn't want to clean a bank?
How to work.
Yes.
Right. Like, we've willingly taken on responsibilities at this point. And, every now and again, my mom would cave and be like, okay, well, part of the perk of this is that if you don't want to stop what you're doing tonight, or if you don't want to miss out on that thing tonight, we can go in the morning.
Oh.
And we'd be like,
so it's always like you're going to pay for it.
Yeah.
One way or the other.
And so we'd be like, yeah, we'll just go in the morning. That's no big deal. But then 4 a.m. comes real quick.
My grandfather's rug cleaning business was really exciting, which later became my uncle's rug cleaning business. And
kept it in the family?
Yeah, for a little while. It's no longer in the family. In fact, they did sell it, and then the new owner wasn't able to sustain it. I think that's another thing, is legacy.
Legacy.
I think that's another episode.
Probably.
I think there's an episode there.
I think so.
But anyway, we were just like, as kids, we were surrounded by mountains of rug samples, which we would just play on. And my grandmother would find anything you could possibly make out of a rug sample. She would make it. So like picnic bench cushions she would make. And then my stepfather's milk delivery business left us with a lot of milk crates. So my grandmother would be taking those milk crates and attaching rug samples to the top, so there'd be there'd be footstools or whatever.
Yes.
So they combined forces.
I love it.
But my grandparents literally had their walls covered in rug.
In rug? I mean, why wouldn't you? It's insulation, buddy.
I know.
Yeah.
It was very
oh, I love that.
Sound insulating too.
Do you have any photos of that?
I don't know. I might somewhere.
You'd have to dig around.
Yeah.
If you find some, we'll post them up.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy. I do know that I do believe that growing up in a family business is one of the only reasons that I have the grit to do what I do now in my business. Mm-hmm. I'm very thankful for that. I think there's a lot of tenacity that comes from it, just from observing that and seeing that is hard when you have never seen it. You certainly don't have the illusion that it's going to be easy. Right. You never think that.
Mm-hmm. And I honestly think that is the downfall of a lot of small businesses. They say that many, many, many businesses fail in the first couple of years.
Yep.
And I think people easily romanticize what it's like to work for yourself, what it's like to own your own business.
Yeah.
And until you're in it, you don't know how hard it is, how demanding it is. And being raised in it does give you a certain perspective on that. So your expectations of what it's like.
Right.
I think also it's like, I do think people who work for big companies, corporations, it's easy to romanticize what it's like to work in a small business. But I also think that small business owners can often romanticize what it's like to work for a big corporation. You got yourself some health care, don't you? You got yourself some paid vacation.
Must be nice.
I know. So there's a little grass is greener from both directions.
Oh, for sure. Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. I absolutely think that you could go around on the merry-go-round for days.
And at the end of the day, there's perks to both and there's problems with both. So it's just a matter of, choose your poison, I guess.
Yeah, pick your poison or Pick your
joy.
Yeah, I was trying
Follow
to think
your
something-
bliss.
I was trying to think of something that started with a P, but joy and bliss is fine. Whatever.
Pick your passion.
Pick your no. We're gonna revisit this.
I had a friend, more of an acquaintance, let's say.
Ooh, burn.
I was chatting with this person, and he said something like, tell me how you got into business for yourself. Did you have family in business for themselves? And I was like, yes, I did. Mm-hmm. He's like, yeah, I don't think people get into business for themselves unless they have family in business. I was like, I don't know if that's true. Maybe. Conversation ended, and I was kind of kicking it around later mentally.
Chewing on it.
Yeah,
mulling
I was
it over.
chewing on it. I was mulling on it. And I think what he might have meant is something different than I interpreted
Took it?
I think what he might have meant is sort of like I'm in a Rockefeller situation where I have family and business.
Oh, so they
and
set
then
you up.
And so they set me up.
Yeah, they set you up.
Financially. And
Yeah.
that is not the case
Yeah,
at all, 0%.
Yeah, right.
But I think that there's this idea that if you're in business, then you have old money somehow.
Yeah.
And that it's
Yeah.
trickling down to you. And maybe in some cases that is, but
Right.
I do know a lot of small business owners who start with nothing.
Right.
Nothing.
I think perhaps that perception is a little bit like small business versus micro business.
Sure,
Like, small
yeah.
businesses can be classified as like, I don't know, 500 employees or less or something
Right.
like that.
I don't think that's
it's not
small.
that big, but
whatever.
you know
yeah.
what I mean. It's a lot of
I
employees
suppose.
or less. And I mean, I think there's a delineation between that classification of small business and our businesses, which brings me to the micro. And I don't think in micro businesses you see a lot of like family money propping them up.
Right.
My dad's business was very different than mine. He wanted something that he could build his own schedule so that he could spend time with his growing family. Mm-hmm. But he needed something to pay the bills that would provide stability. And so that's why he started his window cleaning business. It wasn't like he had a wild passion for window cleaning. He enjoyed it, but I think he started that business out of a little bit of entrepreneurial spirit and a little bit of necessity.
Yeah. I've been thinking a little bit about how industry changes and how hard it gets to hand businesses down. In fact, let's pretend that I was going to hand my business down to my child. More and more people are framing online.
Right.
Will a business like mine be relevant in 20 years? Will it
Right.
exist? There's so many. I mean, window cleaning is a thing that I don't think is going to go out of
Probably not
style.
gonna go out of
I don't think there's a
style.
lot of like.
I don't think AI is going to take that one
right.
over.
But
Yeah.
a lot is.
Yeah.
And I think that, let's say reupholstery, because as part of the rug cleaning business in my family, my grandmother did literally reupholster furniture.
Okay.
But furniture has changed so much. Like you can just get
a new one.
click a button, and all of a sudden you have a couch for $200, and it costs way more than that to reupholster something.
Right.
So her business becomes obsolete, and there wouldn't have been anything to pass down. And I think a lot of businesses are like that.
Yeah, I think it's tricky. I mean, we have an active business in our family. There's 5 of us siblings. My mom runs it now. Obviously, like you said, window cleaning and janitorial will probably always be a thing. But it is interesting to think about the way. I think the way we think about generational businesses has changed. I feel like there used to be more pride. I'm going to sound like an old man. I can feel it coming up in me. But I feel like there used to be some pride in I don't know, let's say you've got your furniture business, and you pass it on to your son, and he passes it on to his son, and there's pride in working in the family business. There was almost a matter of course, and it was kind of like a status symbol to be able to say
yes,
that, oh yeah, this is the family business, and we've had it for generations.
This is why people say established blah-de-blah.
Blah-de-blah.
Yeah.
Someday I'll have a blah-de-blah. But now I feel like more and more, I don't know why, but it feels like it's coming back to, it feels like sometimes at a certain point it becomes a burden, and it's not like a point of pride anymore.
Yes,
and so it doesn't feel like a gift. It feels like a burden to the next generation, because sometimes you just don't want to wash windows. And that's okay.
Yes, window washing is not your passion. And when you're young, especially, you feel like you're empowered to follow your passions.
Right.
Right. I remember we took a little family vacation one time with my kid.
And close by?
Yeah, it was, it was an hour and a half away.
All right. Gotcha.
Okay. So I was like, oh, look, there's a bookstore.
Yeah.
I want to go into the bookstore.
Right.
And I invited my child. Do you want to go into the bookstore? And she said, I'm not really into bookstores. I don't really like bookstores. And I was like, okay, well, I got to stop planning to hand this, this masterpiece, my life's work. I guess I'm going to have to not plan.
I guess I just got to make sure I can flush it down the toilet when I'm done with it.
Because this child isn't really into bookstores.
Kid.
But also, like, she was young.
Right.
She's young. And I don't want to saddle her with the burden of a legacy.
Right. And bookstores aren't that exciting
when you're a child,
I don't know, 11, and you could
spend your whole life in one.
Right, and you've spent your whole life living in one.
Yes.
Right. I know. And it's such a, I don't know, it's such a sticky situation, because I feel like in the way of family businesses, on one hand, I think part of why it was more common to have these generational small businesses and pride in the family business is because some of those generations didn't have a choice, which I think isn't right. But at the same time, I think nowadays, I don't know, I think there's a lot of opportunity missed in some of these in some of these small businesses. So I don't know what the answer is. I think the answer is that the increased communication about what you want to do is good, and that's worth businesses closing after generations.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what happened for Tom in a way, and we're going to introduce our guest, who's generously agreed to talk with us about, in a sense, family business and it lasting for multiple generations in one small town.
Yeah, and I'm excited to peek into that, because it's like we all have an idea of what that is. And thankfully we have a first row seat with Tom here in the studio. Okay.
So we wanted to have you on twofold. We wanted to ask some questions about the insurance industry in particular. But can you tell us about your history in insurance and your family's long history in insurance?
Well, my history is easy because I lived it, but I can't really talk about all of my generations of my family in insurance. I can kind of tell you how they got into it, how my father got into it. Not sure about my grandfather or great-grandfather. But,
crazy.
But my first job offer was in January of 1983 from my father. And of course, there was no internet back then and no email. And so the first letter I received in my spring semester at college was a job offer from my father.
Did he ask for a resume or anything? Or he just
no resume. He knew my background and most of my work history.
That's convenient.
Yeah.
Did he ask for references?
He didn't ask for references, but he kind of laid out what it was to be in the insurance business in your hometown. And so he said, look, you can sit in your grandfather's desk and we have a seat waiting for you. And it has served 4 generations very well, raised our families, sent our children to college, at least one of the generations did. And this is what you could do. And he kind of laid out the financials of it.
Yeah.
Okay. And I said, and I replied with a letter and essentially told him that I wasn't interested. I went to school 600 miles from home. I have a degree in forest management, and I minored in journalism. And it's not like I wanted to get away from Geneva, but in the back of my mind, I couldn't imagine selling pieces of paper to people.
Right.
And making a living at it. But remember, like I say to people, no matter what your degree is in, when you graduate from college, regardless of the time that it took, 2 years, 1-year program, you're undecided on what you want to do. You shouldn't have to determine, this is what I want to be.
Especially that young.
I was going to say,
Right.
I have 2 quick questions. How old were you when you got this job offer?
I would have been 21, almost 22.
21, almost 22. And you couldn't imagine selling pieces of paper to people. You were going to school for forest management. Was there some kind of link there because paper was forests being cut down?
I wasn't actually in the pulp and paper end of forest management to get really into the, no pun intended.
That's where I went,
into
yeah.
the trees.
Into the trees.
So the program I was in was managing the timber for other uses.
Okay.
Which isn't clear cut, burn, pave, and put up a McDonald's.
Right.
That was always the joke back then. Oh, clear cut, pave, put up a McDonald's. But,
interesting.
there's more to that. But
yeah.
So anyway, in the back of my mind, I'm saying, live in your hometown, live in Geneva. It's like
that you just got out of.
Ew, and in the mid '80s, Geneva was nothing like it is today. Okay, so I had some temporary jobs. They were contract jobs with the U.S. Forest Service. I had a job in Minnesota and 2 in Alaska.
Oh.
And they're all contract jobs, so when they ended, you're
out of
on
there
to the next site, or I was on to painting houses or whatever it may have been. And so I was living in a tent in Alaska.
Oh my goodness.
We lived in the woods.
Did you love it?
We loved it. It gets old because it rains every day in southeast Alaska.
Man.
It rains every day. The salmon spawn on the runway. That was the bumper sticker in Yakutat, Alaska.
It's inspiring.
It rains every day, yes. But if you're into salmon fishing, that's where you go.
Okay.
If you're from the lower 48.
Shout out
For
to
a visit.
Yeah,
for
shout
a visit during spawning season.
Right.
And then you go back home.
Right. Shout out to our listeners in Alaska.
In Alaska, yes.
So I essentially, in my lantern in my tent, wrote my father a letter, a Dear Dad letter, saying that I accept his offer. Okay. I'm 23 years old. I'm single. I have no children. I have no debt. What a perfect time to experiment in the family business.
Right.
And the experiment, it took me a month to get home.
Oh, my goodness.
So I went down the West Coast. I painted for a relative in California. I took the Amtrak across the country to Philadelphia. I got into Philadelphia on a Thursday. I saw one of my high school friends there. He was originally from Geneva. He drove me to Geneva on Friday, and that Saturday morning,
your dad said no.
I put on someone else's necktie.
Oh my goodness!
And I went to the office on Saturday morning, learning the insurance business, and I did not own an Oxford shirt. I did not own dress shoes. I lived in flannel shirt and patched blue jeans and steel-toed boots. So,
interesting.
Not terribly outgoing. I was still stuttering a little bit at that time and somewhat conscientious about it. So
I don't know that, Tom Burrall.
That's how it started. And
interesting.
Anyway,
I love that.
I had the advantage of working with my father for about 9 years before he died of colon cancer. And that was essentially about how long it took to actually get comfortable in running the type of office that we ran. and that we continue to run today, which is we service every form of insurance except for hospitalization and medical. I made minimum wage, and I sat in the front window at Gramps' desk.
There you go.
Okay. And he said, go out and insure one house a day.
Oh, wow.
One
That is
house a day.
interesting.
That's all you have to do. Go out and insure one property a day. And then if you insure one property a day, then just take the afternoon off.
Ooh.
But of course, he was joking on that.
Oh.
Because I don't know how to take an afternoon off. And he didn't know how to take an afternoon off either. But he said, go out and insure a property a day because everything else will come naturally after that. There was actually far more competition 40 years ago than there is today. So one by one, lack of perpetuation or other reasons, in 2024, I now find myself as the only insurance outlet in downtown Geneva.
Right.
And oddly enough, the only insurance outlet in the city of Geneva. Our competition right now is to get people to understand the value of having someone in time of need. So if you opt to be your own insurance agent, which is essentially what you are doing when you buy your insurance online.
Yep.
And you don't have to talk to anyone, that means that you actually know whether you need any of the 20 coverages on an automobile policy. So if you can do that on your own, then I think you should do that.
Yeah.
Okay?
Of course.
But when there's an issue, which occasionally happens,
Don't come crying to Tom.
Someone will call me and they'll say, I need a second opinion. Can you tell me if this insurance information is accurate? And I'm not your client. But I'm a teacher, so I'll teach anyone. Sure, what's your question, Joe? And then we go from there. I spend more time teaching people about what our industry is all about, because right now our industry is really upside down because weather patterns are changing in a way where insurance companies that are insuring that risk don't know how to generate a premium for that risk because we've never had this type of weather event in certain parts of the country.
In this area. My parents had a window cleaning janitorial business. We all worked in it, and there's a lot of love that goes into being able to spend the time together, talk shop together. Was there any memorable moments in this time working with your father that you were not best friends and you were at odds
I wrote
over
down
something?
a similar question.
A similar
Yeah.
question, because I know, I'm just going to confess here, I think every single one of us children that worked for my parents at some point got fired. We got rehired, but
Right. But
we
you never
all
collected
got fired.
unemployment.
Not a cent. We've all been fired before, and I think that's very real. It happens, you know?
Yeah.
Did you run into that?
I don't remember that I did, but I wasn't exempt from criticism.
Okay, that's
So,
fair.
There was no word processing equipment in 1985. So all of our letters were typed.
Okay, a lot of clicking,
But that's where it was.
and clacking.
Everyone had a typewriter on their desk.
Right.
And so, he was the copy chief, and all the mail went through him, and he would say, Tom, I really don't think you want to put these two sentences in here. I don't think I would send this out to Harold like this.
Okay.
And then he would explain why, and this was a better way to put it, and that was the type, I guess, of business advice that I had learned. And so, okay, now I got to go back to my typewriter, get out another piece of carbon paper.
Yep.
Right, because you couldn't use the copy machine.
You couldn't
It was
just backspace.
Right. And liquid paper, it wouldn't look very good.
Only get you so far.
Yeah.
Especially when it's 2-3 sentences,
Exactly.
It gets ugly.
But he was looking back on so many of the things that he taught to me. It's like, wow, how fortunate was I?
Right.
And whether they were of his own doing or he learned it from his dad, my father was actually forced into the business, and
What?
and so he was not going to do that to his children, because in the early ages, my father did not want to be working with his father in the insurance business. What was his passion in the early years? Insurance, probably not. But he learned by being a door knocker. And,
Yes.
and that's
Which is a cold, cruel world. Being a door knocker, cold calling, that's a whole cold, cruel world. My question, before I forget it, is you have developed such a passion and joy around what you do. Do you feel like your father being forced into it, did he have that same joy and passion about it, or is that
At the end, at least, did he grow into it?
Oh, yeah. I didn't have any feeling that he did not enjoy what he was doing when I started working with him after he was in the business, 35 years or so.
Yeah.
And but I came into an office where all of the clientele was WW2. Mm-hmm. Okay, and it wasn't a growing operation because you lose the wind out of your sails after a while.
Yes.
And there isn't a financial need to work at the same level.
Yeah, and that's such a challenge with multi-generation or grown-up businesses.
And so how do we pass the baton, and do we have to do something to survive? Mm-hmm. So the clientele, of course, you're talking about relationships. Mm-hmm. Almost all of them had a relationship with my grandfather and my father, and now they got to meet the quote-unquote third generation.
Yeah.
Okay, and so the stories that I would hear, I remember when your father knocked on my door down on Andes Avenue one night, and he knocked on my door because he wanted to sell fire insurance to us. And we've been a client of your family ever since.
Did you find that you had to tackle, sometimes even when I'm training staff,
I know where this is
find
going,
there's a little bit of, not in a malicious way, but a lack of trust and a skepticism about the new staff member. I have a sister that works for me. There's always that. And I worked in a business where it was two sisters. The sister owned it and her sister managed it. And people would constantly, even decades down the road, constantly say, okay, well, could I talk to Cindy? Okay. And in my own store, they'll say, if they're not happy with what this new person is telling them, all right, well, I think I'm going to talk to Marilla. Could I talk to Marilla? Because there's like this lack of trust. Yeah, I don't want to say
new
respect.
Relationship, and people are comfortable with the old relationship.
Right. So did you feel like you had to? Yeah. Did you feel like you had to? That was a hurdle that you had to
overcome.
Yes, and that will never go away. Really? That will never go away because it exists today with our own staff. Going all the way back for as long as I've been there. So, are you sure that that's right? When Tom gets off the phone, can you have him give me a call?
Yep.
And I try to instill in everyone that, nearly everybody in this office can answer every one of your questions.
You wouldn't have hired them if they weren't capable and able. Yes.
It's a complicated business. There's quite a bit of a learning curve to it.
Yes.
But it's not a difficult business. There's just a lot to it.
Yes.
And you have to be comfortable with that. And so if I said that you could be comfortable in our business in 2 or 3 years, I would not be telling you the truth. After about 5 years, you kind of get comfortable on how the industry operates.
So young
in the types of questions that you're going to get, and they pick up the phone and they have to talk to me, and anyone in the office could answer it like that.
Right. So,
But that's part of the relationship thing.
and did you experience that when you started
Yes.
with your father?
Yes.
How many phone calls did you forward to your father?
It's like, Dad, Steve so-and-so is on the phone. He's got a question about something.
Won't talk to me.
Right.
Yep.
It's okay. You shouldn't take these things personally.
It develops, right? Just like
develops.
passion.
It develops.
Yes.
And you have another generation who is taking over, or at least joined on. I shouldn't say taking over, because you're still very much active in your business and plan to be for quite a while. Is that right? I mean,
That's I still love what I do, but
Yeah.
My wife is thinking I should probably cut down on my Saturday hours a little bit.
That might be good, Tom.
I mean, I want to know how it is kind of easing yourself out, or thinking about easing yourself out, taking Saturdays off and things like that. And I want to know a little bit more about what that process is like for the staff when you're not around. I'm sure they're very capable, but are they having any of those issues?
Saturdays used to be, this feeds right into what we're talking about here, used to be the father-son, I'm going to teach you about the insurance business day. Mm-hmm. So we each drank coffee at my father's desk, and he taught me about business. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily the insurance business, but this is what I find works.
Yeah. There's so
Okay.
many little things in
And-
customer service that you just have to articulate.
Right. And so having your name on the door and running any type of a business, I don't think has ever been an easy road to hoe.
Correct.
Okay? It's just that
What do you mean, Tom? It's so easy.
It's just that right now.
I'm sorry you're struggling with it, Tom.
Go ahead.
There just aren't as many small businesses owned by families anymore.
Right.
Because now we talk about this thing called private equity firms. Mm-hmm. Okay. There's not a lot of family-owned hardware stores. Mm-hmm. Can there be? Yes. But there's pressures in every industry.
Yes.
And so how are you going to figure out how to navigate selling books when your biggest competitor is selling them for half of what you're buying them for?
Oh, I know.
And so, it's one thing, it's easy to say, well, you just have to be nimble and change your business model. But
Easier said than done.
Easier said than done. But it's also a culture in where you do business, on whether people really are invested in what it means to shop local. Okay? Because all of us employ local, and all of us support local things. Mm-hmm. Okay? And I've never seen sponsor anything in our community.
Geneva, New York.
I've never seen them give anything to our healthcare system.
Yes, we mentioned
Our
that.
hundreds of fantastic not-for-profits
Yeah.
that do so much good for our community.
Yeah, the donations episode really kind of
We
touched
dived
on
into
this.
that.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
So as business owners, you are bombarded by solicitation. Okay, whether it's telephone, walk-in, whatever it may be.
It's true.
And, I have been known to ask people where they buy their automobile insurance from. And
Yeah, Tom.
And if they, okay.
Insure one car a day.
Okay. So if they say, well, I buy it online, okay, I said, I will make a deal with you. Call up your online insurance provider and ask them if they're going to make a donation
To Little League.
to your kid's AAU trip.
I love it.
Okay.
I love
Yes,
it.
Tom.
When you bring me that check from your insurance provider, I will write you a check for 3 times the amount.
I like
Beautiful.
this, Beth. We might have to start using that trick.
This is great.
So
Yeah.
now, does that drive home the purpose of buying local? Because you know what?
I think so.
It's no secret. If you don't understand what it means, I'll help you with this.
You're a teacher.
Money travels in a circle.
Yep.
Okay? When you take your money and send it outside, then ask yourself, about how much of that is coming back to the Geneva Family YMCA.
Right.
Because they're raising money too.
That's right.
Okay. I'm not in it to find who's going to sell me the lowest price picture frame.
Now,
Because there are differences in glass.
right?
Right.
And Beth is going to tell you.
Museum glass,
Yep.
clear glass.
Right.
Yep. I'm a teacher.
And okay, I know what a good
And
frame
Beth's the
costs.
expert, right? So, as someone who grew up in a family business that is still operating with many siblings, we talk all the time with my mother about, okay, when mom's ready to retire, we kind of touched on this with your Saturday, taking Saturdays off. When mom's ready to retire, who takes over the window cleaning and janitorial business? And we just kind of toss that around, volley it around the siblings right now, because my mom's not at that point, as you're not at that point. I know you've got a few kids. Do your kids have that conversation? Do you have that conversation? Does it come up? Or is it unspoken? Like, has that come up at all? Because we toss it around. I have adult siblings, and we laugh, and who knows what's going to happen.
I'm taking it over, Marilla.
Beth's going to take it over.
I would like to throw my hat in the ring.
From one big family to another big family. I'm curious if that's coming up at all.
It comes up.
Yeah.
Again, it goes back to me sitting in my apartment in Orono, Maine in January of 1984. Can I vision myself working the way my father has been working all the years when I was living at home? And is this where I want to have my life? I have a daughter in Sweden.
You do have a daughter in Sweden.
And so, okay, she loves it there.
Yeah.
And she may be there forever. And that's perfectly fine.
Who knows?
Because she's living the life that she loves right now and maybe forever.
Right.
But I don't know when she's going to call up and say,
I'm taking it over, Dad.
I remember the story, Dad, of you telling me of how you started working for my grandfather.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's like, if you sent me through college and 5 generations did pretty well, and you're really happy and you held a marriage together, like all the other 5 generations, I think maybe I'd like to do that too.
Maybe you ought to send her a letter, Tom.
Yeah.
Maybe
I'll offer you some minimum wage. Come back.
Good luck with a minimum wage.
I know, right? We can all attest to that.
Can you imagine having that many generations, like being responsible in a way for being was he the 4th? Is he the 5th? I'm not sure. I think he's the 4th.
I think he's the 4th.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to me that, like, he knows his story. He knows his dad's story. He doesn't even know how his grandfather began in it, or his great-grandfather, how it started in the first place, because it's just such a huge amount of time. So it's really crazy.
It must be interesting that it's almost something you take for granted and also something you can never take for granted.
Right.
At the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so unique.
Mm-hmm. Especially in this day and age.
In this day and age.
That never happens. Well, let me ask you this. Have you ever worked for a big company? And by big company, I don't even know what that means. Like, or a company with more than 10 people.
Okay. I was thinking about this and I was really ready to say, no, I never have. I actually worked for Aldo's Shoe Company for 2 months.
Oh, cute.
And then I quit.
Oh, okay. Tell me what happened.
Well, I didn't like the big company vibes. It wasn't really a big deal. I was going to, I was working at Outlet Mall. I was going to donate a kidney that fall.
Right. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Just a small thing.
That's another episode too.
But I quit telling them that I needed to take off time because I was going to donate a kidney. But really, I just didn't want to work Black Friday in the mall. So I quit the week before Black Friday.
This is so funny because I had in my brain for some reason that I've never worked for a big company.
And now you have.
Now it reminds me, oh yeah, I worked for Victoria's Secret.
Oh my God.
Yes, I did. Oh. And I also worked for B. Dalton Booksellers, which probably most of our listeners have never heard of, but it was like a major bookselling chain. I think they were absorbed or affiliated with Barnes and Noble.
I was going to say, was it a predecessor to Barnes and Noble? But for the majority of my working life,
me too. Yeah,
I have worked in small business. So when I was working for my mom's business, working as a janitor, like after hours, early hours, and then during the day, my day job, I worked at my cousin's health food store for a decade of my life.
Oh, decade.
A decade. I mean, a whole decade of my life.
That's a long time.
My cousin's sister worked there, and Melinda and I spent many years just filling shelves and pricing items, and I just cherished those years. And then when Cindy retired, it was really tricky because it was like, well, do you want this? Like, she asked me.
Oh, so you had an opportunity to grab a legacy in a way.
Right.
A family legacy.
Yeah. And she had been in business for 45 years, I want to say, maybe just shy of 45 years. So it was a big deal, and it was a very beloved store. To this day, it's still beloved in town.
And you said no thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Beth.
Like,
You're like, you said, screw you.
I'm looking at you. I'm like looking at you like, huh.
Yeah.
This must have been a hard decision.
Yeah, it was. I ultimately said no thank you, really truly, because I was so young. The business was so much older than me. It was a little intimidating to take on that legacy. And I also truly couldn't afford it to really take on a business like that and give someone what it's due. I was young 20s. I couldn't afford it. And at the time, it was going to be more affordable to start my own thing than it was to take on this really established business. And so ultimately I said no, but it was very emotional. It was a very emotional decision, and it was ultimately had to be a very business-like decision, but it's your family and you don't want to see it disappear.
And you don't want to see it disappear. You don't want to see it disappear because you worked there for 10 years.
Right.
You don't want to see it.
Many years there,
sure, but you don't want to see it disappear because it's people who you love started it and invested in it and worked it.
Right. So
and
it was
the community. God, are you sure you made the right decision?
Right. And so it was very tricky, and it was a very hard decision. And I am sure that I made the right decision.
I was just teasing. But
no, yeah. I totally would have made the same joke. But I do think I made the right decision. I'm 100% comfortable with the way it worked out. But to this day, we tried to do it as gracefully as possible, opening our new place. And I talk about Cindy and Melinda all the time. And we have customers that used to shop with us at Mother Earth that are now faithful customers of ours. But, I know there's customers of Mother Earth that won't come into my store.
That's interesting too.
Because I think...
Because you're not Mother Earth.
I'm not Mother Earth. And I think perhaps there's a perception that I... killed it. Like Cindy went out of business and she opened her own place. No, that's not the story at all. Like, Cindy and I are fine. But I think perhaps from a neighborhood gossip perspective, there's a few people out there that might think that. I mean, it's exciting. That story.
If there's some drama.
Yeah, it's a little dramatic. Story. It's a way better TV series. So yeah, that's another little family business that I really have treasured through the years and kind of saw it through its course. Because I went in there as a child. I would go in there when my mom would shop, and then I worked there for so many years.
I think maybe if we need a summary to this episode, it's like we all have to follow kind of our own bliss, our own heart's desire. And you learned, thanks to Mother Earth, that you love shopkeeping, and you love relationships with the community, and you love stocking shelves and pricing things and finding product.
The minutia. Yeah.
You need Marilla's Mindful Supplies. It needed to, in a way, it is the legacy. Like, you are the legacy of Mother Earth. If you just called something different.
Yeah, I hope so. That's in my heart of hearts. I really hope so. And that's what I would say to anyone who asked is, I think sometimes a legacy continuing looks different. And
and sometimes it's Burrall Insurance.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's Marilla's Mindful Supplies. But family business has its own legacy. And I have to say also, I feel like in a way I'm carrying on my grandfather's legacy, my uncle's legacy, my stepfather's legacy. Like, all the lessons I learned from them about running a small business are applied in my own small business. And that's legacy in itself, even though this is not the legacy episode.
Don't get
This
confused.
is the family business episode.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe if anyone's listening that is in the midst of a decision like this, I think the only thing that I could say is trust your gut.
Yeah.
Don't get carried away by the emotions, but don't be afraid to take some heart from that emotion and that sense of place that comes from it. I don't know. Family businesses are complicated and beautiful and difficult and frustrating and maddening. And sometimes your mom fires you, but it's okay.
We wouldn't change it. I wouldn't
change it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't trade it.
All right. 5-star review. Are you ready? All right,
I'm
stretch.
ready. Yes.
Shake off that generational.
The weight of the family business. What do you do every morning, Beth?
I go to the Geneva lakefront.
The Geneva lakefront?
I feel like that was a setup, but I do.
Yes, I do. We go to the Geneva lakefront. I do too.
Yeah.
It's one of the most beautiful spots that you can spend time.
When we see each other down there, it's a little awkward sometimes.
Yeah, we pretend not to know each other. Why do we always do that? It's always like,
I think because we're both having alone time. Like, sorry to interrupt your alone time.
Thanks for respecting that. No, I like that. I like pretending that you're just some random lady that's walking by.
Have you ever seen me jogging down there? I actually do a little
I've
jogging,
never
but
seen
I
you
try
jogging.
to just stop and walk when there's other people around.
All right, we're getting off track. What we're here to do
about the 5-star review.
And how this week we would like to bestow the 5-star review on the Geneva lakefront.
Where you can jog and have no one see you.
You can
and enjoy
arguably, you could. I mean, I almost skinny dip down there.
You do all year round.
I really do.
Go down there in January.
I really do.
And you strip almost naked.
Almost, yeah. I mean, it's decent, okay, depending on your religion. But yeah, I love it. You can get in the water, you can walk, you can roller skate and rollerblade, you can sit in Adirondack chairs and eat ice cream.
You can actually do nothing down there.
You could just lay on the grass and look at the sky. It's really beautiful. And it's something that if you're ever traveling to Geneva, New York, you need to block out a day or a few hours to just hang out by the lakefront. Because uniquely, we have preserved this really beautiful little lakeside paradise.
So,
There's a gazebo. There's live music.
There's a visitor center. There's often live music. Have you guys played down there?
Yes, we'll be there.
Yeah.
We'll be there again.
What's the date? You want to plug that?
It's in July.
All right.
We'll get there.
Yeah. But anyway, we love the lakefront. We're so grateful that the city has not developed it into being anything other than it is, which is a pristine, beautiful, relaxing piece of property.
Did we just make a political statement?
I think we did.
Okay, great. Perfect. Yeah. Let's exit on that.
All right.
We chat about the biz. It is the way it is. Thank you for understanding.
We sincerely thank you for understanding. Please visit us at tyfupod.com to learn more about the show, share prompt ideas, or tell us about your own small business experiences. We may include your story in a future episode. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube at tyfupod or at tyfupod.com. Our theme music was composed by Marilla Gonzalez. The show is produced by Kelly Walker. Too bad for Kelly Walker. No, dude, I listen to tons of podcasts, not just this one.